Here's your host, Alex Garrett.
Hey, everyone. I'm Alex Garrett. And yes, this is the Alex Garrett Podcast Network. But I'm proud to welcome Mr. Mario Gallucci and Mario Gallucci's Mr. Acquittal, defending the rights of the people. See, this podcast is on the Garrett Network, and we have been privileged to have tens of thousands of people listening to podcasts on our platform. But now I'm very happy to introduce one of the top criminal attorneys in the country, Mario Gallucci. And welcome back, Mario, once again to Mr. Acquittal. It's your show, so I want us to, after the new year, I want you to take the stage here and tell us what you've been up to since the start of 2024. Let's start there.
So, Alex, I got to tell you, it's a big week here over in the United States and the world, because on Sunday it was March 10th, and you would abbreviate that MAR10 or Mario. So March 10th is Super Mario Day, and I got to celebrate it with my family and the people I work with. We had cake today to keep the celebration going. And it's a day that we celebrate all Marios throughout the world, including.
Well, how about that? And I know you are of proud Italian-American heritage, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Born and raised Italian, parents Italian, grandparents Italian, go for dual citizenship. Like I always say, Alex, the Italians, we found it, Christopher Columbus. We named it Vespucci Americano, and we built it. So if it wasn't for Italians, there wouldn't be a United States of America. And quite honestly, it's named after an Italian.
Absolutely. And I know that you had a big start to the year. So tell us what's going on with Mario Gallucci. Last time we left off, we talked about the holidays and, criminal defense around the holidays. And what really touched me last time we talked, Mario, was that you were, able to go visit some of your clients while they were in prison. And does that continue in the new year? I'm sure you've had that and other things happening for you this start of 2024.
So 2024 started with a bang. I'm supposed to start a very big murder trial in Ocean County, New Jersey. I don't want to give the name of the case, but it's a significant case. I understand that it may be a Netflix trial, meaning that Netflix has been taking photographs and video of some of the court proceedings, and they've been following me around and following the prosecutor, I believe, around. And we start that on April 23rd. I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be a 7-week murder trial. I just started hearings, very interesting hearings, actually. It's called a Sirah hearing. And a Sirah hearing is a hearing that the prosecutor tries to get in previous testimony of a victim without the victim actually testifying. So you say, how does that work? So let's say Alex Garrett is a victim of some crime, and Alex Garrett doesn't want to come and cooperate with the district attorney's office. Well, that's all well and fine. Unless the district attorney's office is able to prove that the reason why Alex Garrett doesn't want to testify is because the defendant in the case has threatened him in some way that he's become afraid to come in and testify. So in the case I have right now, we've started hearings on that case. It's called the Sirah hearing. My client is accused of kidnapping an individual, and she does not want to testify. As a matter of fact, she wants to testify for me, the defendant in the case. So the district attorney has started these hearings, and they have a bunch of phone calls, because as you know, every phone call while you're in prison is taped, and they tell you, as soon as you make the phone call, and I don't understand this. I see it all the time. I tell my clients, don't talk on the phone. You could say, I love you, honey. I'll see you someday. What are you eating for dinner? But don't talk about the case. And inevitably, even after they get that warning that this phone call is being recorded, what do? They talk immediately about the case. So in this case, the district attorney has about 1,500 separate phone calls that they are going to try and introduce at this hearing.
1,500? You mean your client talked about this 1,500 times?
1,536 to be exact.
That's just, and as a criminal defense attorney, that must feel so boneheaded. You got to talk to your client, like, what are you doing, right?
You know, Alex, I often say I could lead the horse to water, but I cannot make them drink. It's amazing at the amount of times that I'll tell a client, don't talk to this person, don't do this. I'll give you a perfect example. I got a call one time from a client. It was the middle of the night. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. He called me up and he said, the police are at his door. The police are at my door. I go, are they inside your place? No, they're not. I go, well, that means that you shouldn't open the door, because if they had a search warrant, they'd be inside your house. Don't open the door. Don't open the door. And guess what he did?
He opened the door.
He opened the door. They executed a search warrant. They found, they came in, they found a lot of contraband, and he was arrested when all he really had to do was allow me the opportunity to speak to the officers that were at the scene and try to resolve it without them going into his home. But like I said, you could lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I wish I had a nickel for every time a client did something that we told them not to do, and they did it. So,
well, obviously you are one of the you are the top ranked criminal defense attorney. So obviously you got a lot of acquittals, you got a lot of wins. So how does a client overcome that to become acquitted, if you will? Like, how do they overcome those boneheaded mistakes? What's your advice?
So my advice usually is then I have to take a look at the law and see if law enforcement followed the proper procedures that go along with executing a search warrant or an arrest warrant, to see if the arrest was legal, to see if the actual facts they have in the search warrant are legal. So sometimes a search warrant is not based on officers' observations, but they're based on what you call a confidential informant. So a citizen could say, on such and such a day, I was in such and such a house and I saw a loaded firearm. So without any other indicia of proof that this person is reliable or has ever given any information before, it's very unlikely that they would get a search warrant. So it's up to somebody like me to test that system. And we ask for hearings on that. In this case, it would be called what's called a Darden hearing, where we request a judge to review the veracity of the person giving the information to the judge to get a search warrant. And if that person is non-law enforcement, and I'll explain the difference. If that person is non-law enforcement, like I just explained, a confidential informant, then it would go, one way, where we get this hearing, the Darden hearing. But let's just say that an undercover officer, part of law enforcement, buys drugs from you in your house. Now that's a law enforcement warrant, and those are much more difficult to overcome. But there are actually ways around that too. I mean, I had a very significant case where I had a client who every single time a drug dealer would have a phone call to meet somebody, they would stop at my client's house. And my client would order pizza, and they'd have pizza, and then this person would go and sell drugs. So the prosecutors got a search warrant for the home of the pizza ordering guy, and they found drugs there. But I was able to demonstrate to the judge that there was no indicia to say that my client, who was ordering pizza, had anything to do with any of the drug dealing. He wasn't part of any conversation. He wasn't part of any investigation that led them to believe that he had drugs in the house. And that actually was dismissed. The case against my client was dismissed because they had no probable cause to execute that warrant.
We're talking with Mario Gallucci on his show, Mr. Acquittals. Mario, I feel like we've gotten into this, but my favorite question to ask you around this time. What's firing you up today, Mario?
What's firing me up today is Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel cracks me up. So, Jimmy Kimmel does the Academy Awards, and I love the Academy Awards this year. It was probably one of the least controversial Academy Awards we've seen in a very, very, very long time. I especially liked Ryan Gosling. I'd love to hang out with Ryan Gosling. What do you think about that? I bet you if you hung out with Ryan Gosling, you'd have a great night. He's
a man's man, right?
Yeah, he does his craft. He does a great job at it. He seems to take life pretty easy and easygoing. And you never see him in the news for getting in trouble. You never see him in the news for being outspoken. And then you get a guy like Jimmy Kimmel, who hasn't even graduated college. I believe he got an honorary PhD from Las Vegas University. I don't know if I'm right on that, but I think his educational background was an honorary doctorate from Las Vegas University, a university that I understand that he dropped out of. And he's the one that needs to all the time bring in the political fodder. I don't understand what qualifies him to be a political fodderist, if that is such a word. But for some reason, Jimmy Kimmel believes that this is his forum and his forte. A college dropout should be a political analyst. He should stay in his lane. His lane is being a host of a talk show. You bring on a chimpanzee and I'll interview them. You bring on some guy who wrote a book and you interviewed him. I don't know why he finds it necessary to jump in a political forum, but he does. But, with that being said, Donald Trump gives it to him, too. Trump should just ignore
100%.
Right? Trump should just ignore him. Why even give him the satisfaction? Actually, by Trump going back at him, he's actually giving him some credibility. So I don't understand it. When I meet Donald next, I'm going to have to mention that to him. Why are you even giving this guy any credibility? Just leave him alone. Let Jimmy Kimmel stay in his lane, talk about his books. You know what else is annoying me, Alex? This Manasquan basketball team. And I played high school sports. I played college sports. And I understand how upsetting it is to lose a game the way they lost the game. But, this is the day and age. Do they want like a participation trophy, which is something else I hate? Participation trophies. I can see no reason why anybody should get a participation trophy, but put that aside. So let's take that Manasquan basketball game. You have a blown call. It's a blown call. But if we go minute by minute in that game, I'm sure there were many blown calls. I'm sure there were many fouls that got unnoticed. I'm sure there are many things that were called fouls that weren't fouls. That if we went second by second in every single game, no matter Manasquan, no matter the New York Knicks, no matter the New York Giants, which we'll get to, there's always going to be an issue with something. And for them to take this all the way to a court system, the courts, to overturn a high school referee's decision, it blows my mind. And this is the generation we get. This is what we get. We get a bunch of kids that get participation trophies that think it's their right now to appeal a ref's decision to a court.
Well, I've never seen a game get legal action like that. Maybe you have in your time, but I've never seen that taken to the legal system. You're right on that. Has it happened before?
I've never seen it. I know the New York Knicks had a blown call a couple of weeks ago, and they appealed it to the league, and the league said that's not appealable. It just blows. I mean, this is the day and age we're in. I mean, once we started handing out participation trophies, this is when things like Manasquan start to take place.
Now, I guess the other thing was, two referees overruled the one, so majority rules in that case also, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, you mentioned Trump, and since we last talked, he's only been fined, $350 million, and it's just been quite a mess.
$350 million. How about the money he owes to the lady?
Jean Carroll, right? Yeah.
He owes her, a woman that he claims he never met before, right? Let's think about this. He claims he never met her before. She claims that she met him over 20 years ago in a dressing room somewhere. And I think it was like a Bamberger's or Lord & Taylor, one of these department stores, and that he sexually assaulted her. Out of nowhere, he met her and sexually assaulted her in a department store. When it happened over 20 years ago, she never went to the police to make a complaint. She never went to the store to make a complaint. But once, he started, winning things and becoming president and, this whole left-wing conspiracy. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I am really not a conspiracy guy. But let's look at what they're doing to this poor guy. This guy runs for president. They have the Steele dossier, right? Russian collusion in the election, which they find out not only is not true, but that Hillary Clinton's team is behind that. Hillary Clinton, who's married to Bill Clinton, who's having sex in the White House and flying around with Epstein. They're the ones that start the Steele dossier. Then he becomes president. Nancy Pelosi, the day he gives the State of the Union address, rips up his speech, which is a crime. That's a crime. That's destruction of an official document that would go into the National Archives. She ripped it up. Could you imagine today if today's Speaker of the House ripped up Biden's speech while he was doing his speech, his State of the Union? Wouldn't happen. Nancy Pelosi stood behind Trump and made faces at him the whole time. They're talking about division. Division. If that's not the greatest example of division, I don't know what is. He's being prosecuted more than Gotti, more than Capone, more than any other, whether you like him or not. As a citizen of the United States, you have to say to yourself, why is our country going in a direction where one side could use political leverage to take down and destroy an opponent? This is what goes on in Russia. This isn't what goes on in the United States. It's an utmost disgrace what's going on in our country with respect to this election.
And I know, the State of the Union this past Thursday, he was really going at it with Republicans instead of really focusing on the speech. I thought he wasn't focused on the speech at certain points. He was just wanting to interact with the crowd. And that's not what was presidential to me about Biden. All right.
Well, he has nothing to say, Alex. There's nothing for the man to say. He's got nothing that he could possibly say except bash the Republicans. He's failed in the economics. He's failed at the border crisis. He's failed on the international stage. We're a laughingstock to China. We're a laughingstock to Russia. Israel is bearing with us right now because we're giving them all these weapons, but now you just dismissed them. How could he possibly say we're going to have a ceasefire last Sunday when he never even confirmed that with Netanyahu, who's in charge of the country, and drawing red lines that he then withdrew and said, no, I never said that.
Speaking of the border crisis, because you are of the legal mindset, you do get acquittals. I hate to ask this, but have any migrants sort of ask for your help during this time? Are there ones that are maybe being falsely accused of situations going on in the city and elsewhere?
So what we're seeing now is first of all, no, I haven't. A lot of these migrants who are getting in trouble, like they're given free housing, they're given free food, they're given free transportation, they're also given free lawyers. So if they get in trouble, they're generally represented by the Legal Aid Society, which is a great organization. I'm not knocking the organization. But these people are represented by indigent defenders because the government allows that to happen. There's very little oversight on who's entitled to a free attorney and who has to pay for an attorney. I had a guy in here, I don't remember if I told you this, but I had a guy in here for a DWI about 2 months ago, and I'm looking at his case, and his case is old, and in the case, I see that he was driving a Maserati, and I'm like, a Maserati? How did you get legal aid? And he said to me, they gave me a free lawyer. I'm a businessman. So I said, why should I pay for a lawyer if they give me a free one? And it wasn't until I realized that the free lawyer wasn't doing much for me that I now knew I needed, a private lawyer. So that's what's going on there. And these migrants are, there's good ones. Look, there's good and bad in everything. There are migrants that come here that truly need asylum. There are people that are persecuted in their own country, and they come here and for asylum. But we also are seeing a lot of people come here who have criminal ideals and are doing things in their own country and are coming here to disrupt ours. Did you see the article in the paper the other day where they're selling fake Social Security cards, IDs, and everything on a street in Queens. The New York Post, which is doing a great job, the New York Post sent out an undercover reporter who was able to secure for himself a driver's license, a social security card, and something in addition to that, able to open up a business, he was able to do everything. So it's crazy, just crazy what's going on.
Well, we are almost out of time for this episode, but come back for another episode, Mario, and we'll talk more about some really interesting things going on. It's 4 years since the pandemic. I want to get your take on how the law and the legal system has changed in the post-pandemic world, during the COVID world, and of course, a body parts case in Long Island. We got to get into that in our next episode.
Absolutely. I had the most famous body parts case.
Mario Gallucci, you are a criminal defense attorney with over 33 years of experience, recognized as one of the top lawyers in New York and New Jersey. And once again, they can reach you by calling 888-369-0674. No obligation, right? Free
no obligation. Free consultation.
At 888-369-0674. And email you at mario@thegallucciLawFirm.com.
Thanks, Alex. As always, it was a pleasure sitting down with you and doing this again.
This has been Mario Gallucci's Mr. Acquittal, defending the rights of the people on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network.